In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast, I am joined by my co-host Richard Stayman, also known as Mavs Magic Draft on Twitter, or should I call it X? It will always be Twitter to me. No disrespect to Elon Musk, but it will always be Twitter to me. But in this episode, Richard is going to cover and share his thoughts on several NBL prospects that are playing in the Next Stars program down under in Australia. I gave my personal opinions on the Next Stars guys a couple weeks ago after they played in the NBL Blitz. And now Richard is going to add his opinion after the players have played 2 or 3 regular season games and a couple exhibition games against NBA teams. Stay tuned. Shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board. And like I mentioned in the open, my co-host for today is Richard Stayman. Had a little bit of technical issues if you're watching on YouTube. That's why it looks a little bit different, but he got it all figured out. I am still in Madrid. I'm here for the next couple of days. So far, I am enjoying my time here. Went to a EuroLeague game last night, have a few practices from 14U to 16U to 18U, and even a couple games that I'll be attending over the next few days. While Madrid has been great, I'm ready to go home. The hotel prices in Madrid are ridiculous on the weekend. Ridiculous. A hotel that I'm staying in is about $70 a night, and then it goes to $300 a night, $350 US dollars a night on the weekend. And I'm not staying in a glamorous hotel by any means. It's just a regular hotel that's not even in the center of the city. It's by the airport. So I'm enjoying my time here, but I am ready to get out of here because it is too expensive on the weekend. It is so expensive to stay in a hotel in Madrid on the weekend. It's actually cheaper for me to catch a flight, stay in a nice hotel not too far from the beach in Barcelona. It is cheaper to do that. It was even cheaper for me to go to Lisbon, Portugal for the weekend than it is to stay in Madrid. I'm seriously thinking about it. However, there's games that I need to watch and some practices that I need to attend this weekend. So it looks like I'm going to be here and just have to pay the high prices. I'm cheap. I might go stay in a hostel and rent out the whole room at the hostel and it'll be a whole lot cheaper. That's just me. I just don't like spending a lot of money on hotels and I'm not going to be there. But anyway, that's not what you tuned in for. However, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please like, subscribe, share. You can hear a little bit more. I'll make it brief, but a little bit more stories about my travels because I plan on spending a lot of time traveling abroad this season just so I can give you the best scouting reports on international prospects. Of course, I'm still going to give my scouting reports and thoughts on the college players, but I think this is a wide open draft class that's going to feature a lot of NBA players or a lot of feature a lot of guys that are going to be drafted. And so I plan on spending time in France and Spain and Serbia. I may even go down to South America. But in this episode, we're going to talk about the prospects in Australia. I've been getting hit up a lot about, am I going to make a trip to Australia? I don't know, man. I don't know. The best time would have been at the Blitz where all the players were in one location. And Australia can be a little tricky because even though it is a league that is focused on development, the teams are trying to win. And you could end up going down there and seeing a guy that's not playing a lot of minutes. But that can happen in Europe also. But however, this episode, Richard Stayman is going to share his thoughts on the NBL prospects. And so we had little technical difficulties like I mentioned, but we got it all figured out. All right, here is my interview with Richard Stayman. And the first player that we're going to talk about is Bobi Klintman. Now, Bobi Klintman is a player that kind of had the draft world buzzing in April and May until he decided to opt out of the NBA draft and go play in the Next Stars program in Australia. I thought that was a wise decision. Showed some flashes of his talent at Wake Forest. And there's some people that thought he could have been a first-round pick just based off the flashes, but he chose to go to the NBL. And NBA teams had a really good opportunity to watch him at the NBL Blitz, but then they had a chance to watch him in the States last week as his team played 2 exhibition games against the Washington Wizards and the Toronto Raptors. And how can I say this? I'm sure Klintman wishes that he played a lot better, finished 4 for 24 from the floor, 2 of 12 from 3. And so I asked Richard if he believed that Klintman was settling for too many threes because half of his attempts were from deep. And in my opinion, and this episode is more so about Richard's opinion, but in my opinion, with a guy that size and that skill, that 6'10", that can handle the ball, I think he's bailing the defense out by shooting half of his shots from deep. I just think he's too talented to bail defenses out like that. I think he's a good shooter, but I don't know if he's a good enough shooter to where 12 of his 24 shots over 2 games are from 3, but Richard wasn't too concerned. So here's Richard's thoughts on Bobi Klintman, how he played, and his overall scouting report on Mr. Klintman.
I think I like Bobi enough because all he has to do is really be a shooter, right? He's 6'9", 6'10". I think if he can hang on to that as his like dominant skill, I think he's got a place in the NBA. I think for him though, it's really just the pace seemed to really overwhelm him in those games. And, I don't think he was ever somebody that was going to be ready to play against NBA competition right now. He just happened to be on a team that played 2 games against Toronto and Washington. And I think for him, it kind of hurt him. I mean, he went 1 of 12 in one game. And I mean, neither of those games was he efficient, but ultimately for him, like he's a guy who emerged at the end of last year. I think he's somebody that is still a long-term prospect that doesn't change based on these games. It just kind of confirms more than anything. Ultimately, like in year 1, if you say he had come to the NBA, right, this year, I think he would have been taking a lot of threes as is. So I actually really don't mind it. I just wish he had made some more. That's really where my concern is at, is just, he didn't really make that many shots. But I think a lot of them were simple spot up shots that he's going to be getting in the NBA. They weren't really like the process wasn't any different from whether it was on the team he's on in Australia or if he was on the NBA team or if he was on the G League team. They're going to be the same quality of shots. I think for me, it's just the year 1 role would always be that shot. I think it's putting it together in game, doing it consistently for an entire quarter of his minutes. I do think that that's where I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. And I think that's why I'm a little bit more acceptable of what happened, of him settling, because I do think a lot of times he's going to be relegated to sitting in the corner and not having a role on offense where he can't create. So how is he going to impact the game that way? I think with him, he's got to be able to hit the shot, right? Like his entirety of impact is based on how well he can shoot. And on top of that, if he is a good shooter, what does he do secondary? Like you said, there is creation ability. He has good physical tools. The athleticism is there, which should help him given his size, like 6'9", 6'10", with his athleticism is ideal for a versatile defender. It's really just putting everything together because right now he's a big if, right? He's theoretical at this point. He doesn't really impact. Like in the 2 games he played, he was 0 impact. And honestly, maybe negative, but like that's not something I think NBA teams are going to go, well, he was bad in a preseason game. So it's still something that's in the back of their mind, but it may not be something that's over his head. I do think that he's just somebody, he's got to put all those tools together. He has the good tools. He's a classic. Can he put them together guy?
All right, when we return, I have more prospects that I want to get Richard's thoughts and opinions on. But I got to talk to you about bird dogs because if you want to look good, and I know you all want to look good, and if you want to look good, then you got to try on or buy. Don't try on, just buy a pair of bird dogs because bird dogs are these stretch khaki shorts that are designed to fit through the thigh and the leg and give you a truly sculpted look. Bird dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. You heard that correct. They fit way better than Lululemon, and they also fit better than your regular shorts because most regular shorts are made out of this stiff and restrictive cotton, while bird dogs fixed the issue and they invented this cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit. And I know the slim fit is in, I don't know, the baggy look is coming back in, but with the bird dogs you get a slim fit, and it's just this cotton. It's a cloud knit fabric that looks like cotton, but it makes the fit a whole lot better. And it stretches so you get a good fit, but you don't have to sacrifice movement. And then they also have this anti-stink sweat fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. And bird dogs are functional for any occasion. You can wear them on a date, you can wear them to play golf, you can wear them to play tennis, you can wear them to a meeting, and you can just wear them to just lounge around. So check out birddogs.com. And if you enter the promo code LOCKEDONNBA at checkout, you can get a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/LOCKEDONNBA for a free water bottle at checkout. You will not want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. All right, the next player that we talked about is A.J. Johnson, and I'm just going to be totally honest. I'm not as high on A.J. Johnson as the consensus. I've seen him projected as a first-round pick. I've seen some people that really, really like him. I think ESPN likes him. I mean, he did not play well at the Blitz, but yet there was like a tweet that had like his positive plays on there, which, you know, I mean, it is what it is, but to me, I think it's a little bit deceiving that you see a clip about how well he played, and then you look at the stats, and he just really, really struggled. And so far, through 3 regular season games in the NBL, the struggle continues. He's averaging 0.7 points per game in 3 games. Now, he's not really getting an opportunity. He's only played 16 minutes in the 3 games, which 12 of those minutes came in 1 game. And again, he struggled in the Blitz, in the NBL Blitz, and I think a lot of it has to do with he's just small. I mean, he's 6'5", 6'6", 160 pounds. It's tough. It is really tough to be effective at 160 pounds, unless you're Terquavion Smith, and I'm a big Terquavion guy. But I think that AJ is a lot further away than Terquavion. And so I think that at least with Terquavion, you know that offensively he can make up for his lack of size and strength on the defensive end. But AJ is small, $160. That may be even being generous, but he's really struggled so far through 6 games, including the NBL Blitz and the regular season. He's averaging 3 points per game on 26% shooting. He struggled on the defensive end. And what's crazy is I had a scout jokingly make this comment to me, and he jokingly said that if he goes out to Australia, makes that long trek to Australia to watch AJ play, and he doesn't get in, he is going to send Jalen Green the bill. And for those that don't know, AJ Johnson and Jalen Green are pretty tight. They worked out a lot together. AJ played on Jalen Green's Adidas team, AU team, so they're pretty close. And so a lot of people have drawn a comparison that they think that A.J. Johnson is Jalen Green light. I don't see the similarities in a sense, but I mean, it is kind of a joke because, the joke is that with A.J. Johnson, in this particular scout's eyes, you just don't know how much he's going to play. You don't know if he is ready, and it is such a long trip that you could end up spending 15 hours on a flight to watch a guy not get in, and so far that has been the case. But Richard shared his thoughts on A.J. Johnson, what he thinks about him as a long-term prospect.
He's another guy who there were some flashes that I liked. I think the quickness, athleticism, and the raw ball handling ability are all very positive. I think that's stuff that he can work with. I think he can get to the rim, needs to finish better against the explosive athletes. I think he was thrown off at times just in the NBL Blitz by some of the recovery ability that his defenders can make. But the big things for me are really just that he's got to add strength. Like, he does not look physically ready to play with pros at the moment. And I mean, he played against Matthew Dellavedova, and Delly ate him up. Like, that's what he was known to do, be a physical pest in the NBA. And he's still that in Australia. And then also he's picked up his dribble a little bit prematurely a couple times. Struggles with turnovers in that regard. I don't know if the turnover numbers are high, but he puts himself in those positions a little bit more easily because of that. He's got good physical tools, just again, that quickness. And I think at least he has the height, right? Like, the weight you can always add. I don't know how much he can realistically add. I doubt he's going to be someone who's, going to add 40, 30 pounds to his frame. But I do think that he is somebody that, like, again, those flashes, given the tools, are really promising, but you got to be able to watch those whole games, because a lot of things on social media, just in general, this isn't a shot like at ESPN or anything. A lot of social media posts now are just like, hey, this guy went 3 of 19. You'll still see all 3 of his makes, and it'll be drawn out like the best video ever. So you just got to be careful what you see on social media. I think his strength is going to be just how he can use his quickness and handle, and honestly, like, his change of pace. Like, I remember against It was the last game he played. I can't remember who it was against, but he had a half spin hesitation and drove to the rim. He actually got blocked on it because he didn't see the help defender. But just that change of pace, the handle, the quickness, I think that's going to be what he can really rely on. The jump shot form doesn't look bad, but in the one I saw, I think it was the same game, he didn't touch rim on it. It looked beautiful off the hands, and then it was just a little bit long. But I think that things for him really are just going to be how can he handle the physicality of an NBA level, like professional pro league, and how can he negate his lack of strength right now? Yeah, I don't think he's a lead guard. Like I said, he's not a good handle, but some of the reads he's made, I think you had said it. I think there were more turnovers, or it was more fouls. Sorry, but he still did have a few turnovers, and I think he's not a lead guard. He's kind of a combo guard. And look, if you're 6'5", it's kind of towing the line. 6'4" is really undersized for a combo guard. That's going to be a concern.
All right, the next player that we're going to talk about is Trentyn Flowers. And so far, Trentyn Flowers is averaging 6.8 points per game, shooting 54% from the floor. And if you saw an episode that I did a few weeks ago about the NBL prospects that played in the NBL Blitz, I pointed out that Flowers struggled mightily, big time struggled when they're playing him at the point guard. He had 5 assists, 13 turnovers, and he really had some difficulties bringing the ball up the court. Parker Jackson Cartwright was in his pocket, made him work for everything, turned him multiple times. I mean, he just really had a difficult time bringing the ball up the court. However, he had a big game in his last game, exploded for 23 points against A.J. Johnson's Illawarra Hawks, exploded for 23 points in only 20 minutes. And Richard shared his thoughts on Flowers, his greatest strengths, some areas that he needs to improve on. And then he mentioned that he just thinks Flowers needed some time to adjust. So here's Richard's thoughts on Trentyn Flowers.
I think he's gotten a lot better. So for those who don't know, he started in the NBL Blitz. They tried running him as a point guard, which just is not it. I cannot emphasize enough. He wasn't really even that much of a point guard or play initiator at the Combine Academy where he was before. And I did not understand why they tried making him a point guard. All it did was really expose every one of his flaws. Like he couldn't, like you said, I forget the defender's name. It was what Cartwright? I knew him when he played in college, but
Parker Jackson Cartwright, who actually had a pretty good game. And I forgot who they played, but when they played an NBA team a couple of days ago, he had a pretty good game too.
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, for him, he was sped up the whole time. His handle looked extremely loose. He panicked against pressure. Like you said, he couldn't bring it up in transition. Off ball, he looked rough. I think that actually might be real. That's like the one thing from this that really, really worried me was just that off ball, he was lost. Teammates would have to be like, hey, get over there, like very late. And it would take him a second to hear it, process it, and then do it. It wasn't just exactly the most fluid thing. And then, which kind of leads into the last thing, which is just the processing speed. He's got to be able to do that on both ends quicker to be able to handle the NBA. Right now, he's an off-ball player, which isn't bad. I think he's got to be able to be a good defender. Defense is going to be a swing skill. I'm not worried about the ball handling. If you're an off-ball player, he has to be able just to attack the basket within 2-3 dribbles, or just get to a spot within 2-3 dribbles. But I think his best tool right now is his athleticism. He's going to be able to use that to beat guys off the catch, like catch and drive, be able to win at the rim. I think that's his best tool at the moment. I think it's going to be processing speed. Which is, putting it all together, right? Where does he know what to do? Does he know when to do it? And can he do it quickly? I think that combination is going to be big for him.
Next, we talked about Alex Sarr. Alex Sarr is a player that I've talked about extensively over the past month. And so just wanted to get another opinion on Alex Sarr. And when we talked about Sarr, Richard mentioned how much Sarr's draft stock has improved over the last 6 weeks. And he goes into detail about why he believes Sarr has solidified himself as a top 5 pick. And he also mentioned some of his strengths and some of his concerns. But Richard is high on Alexander Sarr. And he gave a shout out to Overtime Elite because he thinks that the players that have played in OTE the last 2 seasons that have moved on have definitely proven that the league has a lot of talent, but the players are more prepared than a lot of people initially thought. So here's Richard's thoughts on Alexander Sarr.
He went from a guy for me that I was hesitant to, I didn't know what to make of him at OTE, but the last 6 months have been phenomenal for that program. I mean, between the Thompson twins, Tyler Smith looks good even. And then you got Alex Sarr popping up. I mean, he's a candidate really for number one. For me, he was fringe top 10. Now he's, I mean, top 5, no question. I tried not overreacting and bumping down guys that haven't played. So I hit a little wall at 3, but it's still something I feel like is a very high upside. I mean, he's looked the part of a number 1 pick. Yeah. I mean, he's what is he 7 foot or 7'1"? I feel like he's 7'1", right?
Yeah, I've seen 7'1" with a 7'5" wingspan.
Yeah. So you got that, which is ridiculous. He moves like he's 6'6", 6'7". One of the best athletes in the draft. I think he has a lot of different moves to finish and drive with at the rim, especially off the pick and roll. Like, he's not a traditional, all right, I got like 2 steps and I'm only going to use those 2 steps. He will take the dribble, be creative. He has potential to stretch the floor. The defense, I feel like, is something right now that's more tools than actual like functionality based per se, but like that is something that I feel like will transition very quickly into he can, anchor a defensive scheme and a defense just in general pretty quickly. So that combination of you've got all these offensive tools, I think he's going to be a fantastic finisher at the rim, chance to stretch the floor, and then also the defensive anchor. Like that's a gold mine in this draft.
What are your concerns?
I mean, consistency in a lot of different areas. Some on defense think he has some foul trouble, and then also just shooting isn't that consistent yet.
A player that has really benefited from the NBL Next Stars program. I don't even know if he's officially a Next Star, but the player that has really benefited and helped himself over the past month or so is Alex Tui. And Richard talks about Alex Tui and shares his thoughts on why he believes that Tui is going to rise due to the experience playing in the NBL, and then he goes into detail of why he's high on the NBL league as a whole, and why he believes that it is a very good league for prospects to develop their game, get some exposure, and help their draft stock. So here's Richard's thoughts on Alex Tui.
Yeah, I thought he looked pretty good. He had a game against Brisbane where he had 18 points, 3 steals, 1 blocks, and 4 stocks. And his defense looked really good too. Like, he's long. I want to say he was a Gonzaga commit, right? And now, I mean, he's looked really good in the NBL. The athleticism, the defense, some of the finishing too. He's somebody I feel like he's going to really rise up in the draft program, or excuse me, the draft rankings this year because of the NBL program that a lot of people haven't caught up yet on.
What are your overall thoughts about the NBL and their Next Stars? Do you think that's a route that a lot of prospects should consider taking?
I think it had a little bit of a downfall for a couple years, like not being able to counter the G League Ignite. They maybe got one guy, every once in a while, and a lot of them actually weren't even from the States, but now they're bringing guys over from the States, which I think is going to be huge for their development. And really what happens this year with Bobi, with AJ, and also Alex Tui. I think Alex Tui has the chance to be the best player right away, but even like Trentyn Armstrong, who was from one of the small schools in California, I'm blanking on which one.
Cal Baptist.
There are about 20 different ones I was thinking in my head. And I couldn't remember which one, but yeah, when you see that program taking NCAA players, letting them explode in a pro environment, let them actually make mistakes and play with a little bit of freedom. I think it's going to be really good for them and a little bit more enticing, especially as those G League Ignite rosters keep getting more stacked. Like, a lot of those guys, if they went to the Ignite, they wouldn't be playing.
Another play that we discussed is Trentyn Armstrong. I'm a big Trentyn Armstrong fan. I mean, he is, in my opinion, the most creative passer in this draft. And I just love point guards or playmakers that color outside the lines, that are high risk, high reward passers. And it's just more so like a personal preference, but it's something that I really like. And that is Trentyn Armstrong. He has incredible vision out of the pick and roll, a live dribble passer. I mean, throw some high risk, high reward passes, but I love the creativity. And he has been compared to Josh Giddey. I mean, he's smaller than Josh Giddey. It's a comparison because they play similar styles. Now, Trentyn is not as big as Giddey, but he does have good size at 6'5". So Richard shares his thoughts on Trentyn Armstrong. He talks about his sneaky athleticism, but also his concerns about his lack of shooting. So here's Richard's thoughts on Trentyn Armstrong, the transfer from Cal Baptist, who went back home. Well, he's from Tasmania, but he went back home, near home, to play in the NBL as opposed to staying in college.
Yeah, I think with him, he was a little bit overwhelmed by some of the length against the Wizards. He didn't play against the Raptors, but in the Wizards game, he had 6 turnovers, 8 assists. So he still was positive, which is good. But there were times where, I mean, just the length of Delon Wright, for example, really impacted him. So I think that's stuff where you have to look at how quickly will he be able to overcome the length. And then also in his first 15 shots, he's taken 2 jump shots. So he has to be able to shoot and he has to be able to overcome that length to stick. But he's a fantastic floor general.
And a sneaky athlete. He gets to the rim. Yep. He finishes well. How do you think that would translate to the NBA?
I think you watch, his whole comparison, I feel like since he came on the radar was always Josh Giddey, right? And Josh Giddey's also one of those guys that's underrated at getting to the rim. I think it's a little bit different because Giddey's taller, but I think with how his game translates, it all depends on the jump shooting. Like that to me is the biggest swing skill. I don't care about the turnovers. Like great playmakers, they turn the ball over because they're making, the highest risk pass. And a lot of times it works out, but I think for me, it's just that jump shooting. That's got to be it. Like a point guard that cannot shoot is an outdated archetype at this point.
And the last prospect that we discussed is Ariel Hukporti. Now, I feel like I've been watching Hukporti for a long time. And in theory, it hasn't been that long, but my first time I saw him play was in 2019 at the under-18s, and his teammate was Franz Wagner. And so when you look at Hukporti, he's in the Next Stars program, and it just seems like his name has been on draft boards for a while. And then you look at Franz, who's going into his third year in the league, but they were teammates just 4 years ago. And if you go way back, I first talked about Hukporti. He had a big game, and then this was in 2019 at the under-18s, and Aleksej Pokusevski had like this crazy performance where he had a triple-double. I mean, it was the game that put him on the map, and I remember being at that tournament in Greece, and all the NBA scouts that were there decided to go pile into this gym that was like up this mountain. It had no AC. I mean, it was blistering hot, but everybody went out there to see Pokusevski because he was such an intriguing prospect. At 6'11", he was handling the ball, rebounding, had his triple-double, had a monster game. So the scouts were there to watch Pokusevski versus Ariel Hukporti. And even though Franz was, a big name at the time, but Hukporti was a guy that a lot of people thought was the best big man in Europe in his age group at that particular time. So there was this Pokusevski versus Hukporti matchup that everybody was looking to see. Pokusevski played I think half a quarter and just shut it down mysteriously. He wasn't injured. We just didn't know what was going on. And so we ended up watching Hukporti. I thought he had a good game. I had my concerns because I didn't think his game fit the modern NBA skill set as far as a big. He showed some flashes of being able to space the floor. And over time, he's developed a little bit slower than I thought. And then he had a setback with an injury last year. And he's back in Australia. And I think that he's really helped himself. He's recovered a lot better than I thought. And so Richard shares his thoughts on Hukporti and why he believes that Hukporti will be drafted in 2024.
I was pleasantly surprised because when you watch guys who face Achilles injuries, I feel like that is a death wish for their athleticism. But Hukporti actually slimmed down and he looks pretty nimble and pretty mobile. I was impressed by his defense, like just ability to switch still. I really thought he would look a little bit slower on either end. He was still athletic, catching high lobs. He didn't drop off in that regard, and I think that's huge. And also he improved his body a lot. He was a little bit bigger before and less mobile, but now he's improved that. I think he's still somebody that's a second round prospect, but I think at this point he's going to improve his stock enough, and especially at this state is kept up. But the motor is really strong. The athleticism looks good. I think that's something that teams can see and maybe go, hey, you can be an energy big off the bench.
What do you think his NBA role is?
I think it's that. I think it's going to be an energy big. I don't know if he has much of a jump shot still, but he's fantastic with pick and rolls, right? Like you get someone as big and athletic as him on those. He has a high catch radius, long catch radius where he can catch anything, it feels like. I think he could do that and then switch defensively, grab boards. Like he follows every shot. He follows his own shot. He follows everyone's shot. Immediately he's swimming around box outs. So I think that's stuff that an NBA team can easily find for, the bottom ranking rebounding teams, they can get him next year to impact the game.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast your first listen of the day. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe. That was Richard Stayman sharing his thoughts on the players that are playing down under in the NBL. And also, we'll have more content coming for you. I'm still in Madrid. I'll be here the next few days, so stay tuned for more. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe with Richard Stayman, and I am out.